All right. So, which is harder for people to do, to apply compassion or apply forgiveness?
Forgiveness is more difficult.
More difficult. Well, let's go from there. So, actually, I would love to talk about unicorns, but I think we should start with. You have you've written a few books. You've done a lot of work on happiness and on resilience and on a variety of things, and you have a way of looking at that, of which compassion and forgiveness and acceptance, and I'm going to draw a blank on the other, gratitude and meaning are some of those main factors. So why don't you talk a little bit about that, and then we can get into how people apply that into their lives.
Sure. In response to your question, which is more difficult, compassion or forgiveness, when you look at it from a hardcore scientific perspective, contemplating revenge activates the brain's pleasure center. So if you punch me on the nose, and if I'm thinking about retribution, that's giving me pleasure. And how can I let go of eating dark chocolate, which gives me pleasure, which is retribution? So forgiveness by itself is challenging for the human brain because unforgiveness activates our pleasure center. While when you look at compassion, thinking or acting compassion activates the brain's pleasure center. So we feel rewarded when we think in compassionate terms, or when we think in or we act in compassionate terms. So compassion is much more easier, much more accessible. And you can apply compassion very broadly. Forgiveness intrinsically means you were hurt. It's often construed as weakness by people. And while compassion is empowering. And that's why compassion is intrinsic to us. We all have had compassion because, everybody who has worked with or raised little children knows compassion. So compassion is intrinsic to who we are. It's sort of wired in our brain. The 5 principles in the program are gratitude, compassion, acceptance, meaning, and forgiveness. So the way we have done this is I was looking at what principles engage the brain's higher cortical areas, like prefrontal cortex in particular, and what principles quiet the lower limbic areas. And these 5 principles really stood out. So we sort of put them in the program, and then we assign each of them a day. So Mondays are our days of gratitude, Tuesdays of compassion, Wednesdays of acceptance, and so on. Friday is our day of forgiveness. And you will notice that we try to be pragmatic. You only have to forgive 1 day a week. It's only on Friday.
How did you come to arrive at these 5 pillars as the principles?
So these 5 principles all engage, from a neuroscience perspective, the brain's prefrontal cortex, and they quiet our lower cortical areas, the amygdala. That's number 1. Number 2, when you look at a variety of different faiths, different belief patterns in the world, these principles encompass almost all the different belief patterns I can think about. Each of the regions or belief patterns have a specific focus. We try to integrate them all. And 2 of these are very active, gratitude and compassion. Acceptance, meaning, and forgiveness take a little bit of effort. So we start with 2 easy, which engaging ones, which are gratitude and compassion, and then we build on to the others. No single principle is enough. So if you have just gratitude or just compassion, you'll either just, gratitude alone can become very superficial. Compassion alone can really deplete you. Forgiveness alone is just not possible unless you have these principles. And so just as we have 5, fingers in our hands, so that's how we have these 5 principles.